Okay. Hi,
Hello.
everyone.
Hello.
Hold on, just a couple more people. Okay, I think we're going to start. This program is made possible in part by a grant provided by the Pfizer Foundation. Acromegaly community wishes to thank all that have made education by the experts possible. For this, we say thank you. So everyone, today we have Linda Rio with us. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist practicing in Southern California for over 35 years. She is the editor, author of The Hormone Factor in Mental Health, Bridging the Mind-Body Gap, which includes contributions from some of the world's top experts in endocrinology, neurosurgery, medical family therapy, nutrition, patient advocacy, as well as real accounts from patients and their family members. She was on the editorial team for Pituitary Disorders Diagnosis and Management, 2013, and co-authored with her daughter, Tara, of a book about eating disorders. Linda's numerous articles about the intersection between pituitary disorders and mental health have been published online on Pituitary World News, the Pituitary Network Association, and Pacific Neuroscience Institute in Santa Monica, California. She has been speaking to both mental and physical health professionals, as well as the general public, for years about the importance of early assessment and diagnosis that includes integration of mental health into the treatment of pituitary patients, as well as their family members. As a family therapist, Linda is a clinical supervisor, has taught graduate students, and acted in numerous leadership and mentorship roles within her profession. Linda can also be found online at lindamrio.com and on Facebook at Linda M. Rio, MA, MFT. Thank you very much, Linda, and after you.
Take it away, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, I really am honored, Jill, that you asked me to jump in here. And I wish I could meet all of the people in person and see everyone. This is a brave new world where we're connecting through this medium. It's kind of cool, but it's also nice to meet people in person. But this is what we'll do today. Today I want to talk about, primarily keep in mind, I'm not a physician, I'm not an endocrinologist. I'm here to talk about the mental health side that interacts with what's going on physiologically. So I'll talk a bit about what's going on with the mind and physically to pay some attention to the body. What goes on individually, personally, when you're dealing with a rare illness, and particularly acromegaly. This is not an isolated thing though, because we're all connected. We have people we know, we came from a family, so I think there's some family aspects, and I'll try to talk about that a little bit, and then the broader community. So with that, let's start a little bit. In terms of, and at the very end, I'll take some questions. Hopefully we'll have some time. I think I've allotted enough time, so we'll take questions if there are any. So thank you. So the power and meaning of community. You guys are part of the acromegaly community, and I really wanted to think about that word, especially right now. We're all affected by the pandemic and a very kind of chaotic world. And even more so in the last 3 months, the importance of connections. I believe that in many ways, this pandemic has caused people to find positives in their lives, to take pause, to step back from maybe the busyness of the world, to maybe assess things that are important and maybe not so important. maybe have a little bit of peace and downtime. On the other hand, I think there's also been the negatives that are obvious. But I think a lot of us has found how important it is to have people in our lives, and without being able to have those connections. I was speaking to my sister-in-law who's in Connecticut this morning, and her mother-in-law, who's 102 years old, by the way, just contracted coronavirus. And now, obviously, she was going to die of something. But the aspect of that is not being able to go and connect, other than opening a little window and letting the staff, letting them kind of talk to her through a screen window. At least they had that. There's been many, many, many of those kinds of stories. And what does that do to people who can't connect and either touch physically, hear someone's voice? That can be very difficult. We have done lots of research on the importance of eye contact. We communicate through our eyes. Our brain picks up that face-to-face contact. We're also looking at as powerful and wonderful as Zoom meetings might be, there is a lot of, there's a lot going on neurologically, and it taxes our brains to try to stay focused and connected through these screens. It's better than nothing, but it does have an effect. And I think that's something for all of us being aware of that. And the disruptions in contact for people with pituitary disorders in general, some because of the illnesses, it's caused some disruption in all of that, which is why something like these meetings through the community are even more important. So I laud you all for being part of this. I think this is important to make these connections. So I am going to talk a little bit in general about pituitary disorders kind of on a broader scale, and then acromegaly a little more specifically. There's some things that all have in common. So the impact of pituitary and neuroendocrine disorders primarily has kind of major areas. Sexually, very common to be having some form of sexual disturbances. Emotional imbalances, certainly impacts on a personal level, marital level, family, social life, any kind of connections, because the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis has such an important impact on our emotional life. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So we can't separate those things out, really huge. And then there's the physiological changes. I think are obvious. Anybody with acromegaly, unless you got diagnosed amazingly within a very short period of time, you probably have had to experience some physiological changes. You know what those things are, and they can have a huge impact to your life. So part of what got me into this, and I'm going to talk just a little bit about, as a mental health practitioner, I have really tried to stay on top of the literature, stay on top of my field. And when I came across, very accidentally, I met somebody who had acromegaly many years ago. And in all honesty, I'd never heard of it before. I was embarrassed that I had never heard of this, never learned about it in graduate school. Probably the last time I had heard about the pituitary was in high school biology class, vague memory. And when I began to learn, particularly about acromegaly, but pituitary disorders in general, the one thing that kept coming up is the impact to quality of life. A lot of the medical literature will talk about looking at a patient's quality of life, whether it be the impact of medication. You have to look at, does that improve the quality of life? You don't want to take something that's not going to improve. If there's a lot of side effects, what does that do? Just in general, the physical changes, the emotional changes, the sexual changes, how are you doing? And so we really have to look at that, and that's huge. So in the book that I was on the editorial team for, Pituitary Disorders Diagnosis and Management, which is a book that was really a collaboration from a lot of experts. I did a very small piece of that. But the book was really intended for primary care physicians, nurse practitioners, kind of frontline people that are not specialists in endocrinology, because we know so many patients go undiagnosed for years and years and years. So it was really trying to educate that level. But, and there wasn't nearly as much in there about mental health as I would like, but this is a quote, and I thought it was important. Despite the important role psychosocial aspects play in determining a patient's quality of life and overall adjustment to the disease and the impact it has on others close to the patient, extremely little attention has been paid to the non-medical and psychological literature, to the psychosocial aspects. This is a medical doctor specializing, Valerie Golding, very well known, recognizing that the medical side, you'll find information in the medical literature. You find hardly anything in the mental health literature. So there's no wonder patients wonder about some of their symptoms that come about. So what are some of the symptoms? Many of these, I'm not going to go through every one of these because I'm going to presume that many of you are pretty familiar with all these. These are things that range from something like depression. Now, this is not something that is the first line that a primary care doctor is going to look at. Obviously, many, many people around the world have many forms of depression. And I'm not talking about feeling a little down because you're in a pandemic and you can't get what you want on Amazon in the time you're used to getting it. That a lot of people misuse that term depression. We're talking about diagnosable depression. But for many of the pituitary disorders, unbeknownst to a lot of people, some of the mental health symptoms are actually predate a lot of the physical symptoms, the things that you see on the blood assays and some of the biological signs that are there. A lot of patients will go back and look back once they've gotten a diagnosis and go, oh, I had this, I had that, I had anxiety, I had, you know, a lot of rage, especially with acromegaly, intense rage, anger. Oh my gosh, that was probably over the top of what probably would have been normal expected. So we start to go back in time and start kind of like a detective and start put this together and realize, maybe there's connection here. So when I was first learning about all this as a mental health professional, I started looking at this list and I started looking down this list saying, okay, I don't deal directly with high blood pressure, but I certainly deal with people who have memory impairments, sleep problems, certainly anxiety, certainly various forms of sexual dysfunction. See couples that come in, you know, dealing with that, certainly not unusual. Certainly eating disorders of one kind or another. People will come in frustrated because they gained weight or whatever. Feeling tired, unusually tired. And typically mental health people don't typically ask about, gosh, have you had any leakage from your breasts? That isn't typically something that we've ever been taught to ask. Or is your body changed over the years? Are you noticing any of those changes? What about unusual hair growth? What about vision problems? Those haven't been typical questions. Since I've learned about all this, I'm trying to educate the mental health community. So there's things that are intersecting here, but that haven't been typically in one realm or the other. Mental health has typically been over in one side and physical things in completely different side. A lot of times my experience is in talking to physicians even very smart physicians, when you start talking about anything mental health related, it's like, whoa, I'm going to back up and I'll refer you to someone. I'll refer you to someone over there. And they don't realize that maybe there's a connection in there. I want to address apathy down here at the bottom a little bit. This is also something that's kind of not well understood, I think. Particularly with acromegaly, it is not uncommon to hear about or find out about somebody having apathetic emotion or lack of emotion. And a lot of times it's confused with depression, but the two are really very different. In depression, somebody feels primarily their mood. They feel sad. I mean, they feel it. They have a feeling. But with apathy, it's kind of the absence of a feeling. There's low motivation or no motivation. Somebody just may have no ability to go to work or desire to go to work or interact with people. Family members may describe this, and they don't know what to do with somebody who's in the basement and, you know, maybe on their iPhone all day long or whatever. And this is actually a pretty strong symptom that's seen with those with acromegaly. So I just think it's important to recognize, and one of the reasons about all of that is that the HPA, or the hypothalamic pituitary axis, which is the major parts of the endocrine system or neuroendocrine system, they interact an awful lot with the thalamus, which is very closely located, and something to do with the thalamus has something to do with here, which is called the prefrontal region of the brain. And you're going to see apathy, that when those parts of the brain are affected, you're going to find apathy. So again, we've got this interconnectedness. So when I'm going through and I'm learning about this, I'm just kind of scratching my head and wondering. This is a quote, maybe you've heard, or two quotes, maybe you've heard this before, but it's worth saying again. Dr. Harvey Cushing lived a long time ago, but he is very well known amongst physicians. All doctors just really found him amazing. And he stated, it's quite probable that the psychopathology of everyday life hinges largely upon the discharge of the ductless gland upon the nervous system, the ductless being the pituitary. The psychopathology of everyday life. I mean, almost 100 years ago, he was putting those connections together. And then it just seems like we forgot somehow. Medicine forgot, mental health forgot the importance of this pituitary gland. And then he also said, I think quite profoundly, a physician is obligated to consider more than a diseased organ, more than even the whole man. He must view the man in his world. To me, especially in a world of coronavirus, where worldwide within 3 months, we have learned how interconnected we all are. You know, we are human beings that can no longer pretend that we have nothing to do with one another. And we do need to pay attention to that, I think. And certainly he figured that out. So I talk about this as my light bulb moment. In my training, I was trained to look at relationships between people, in families, in societies, work environments, whatever, how they connect, how they communicate to one another. And all of a sudden, when I started learning about the HPA axis, the endocrine system, a system that's inside the body, I was trained to work with the outside system. All of a sudden, I went, oh my gosh, this inside system actually has something to do with the outside system and vice versa. They go both ways. And that started me on a quest to try to find people that would know about this and to understand this, and to writing a book, which I never really intended to do. I was looking for somebody else to do it, but I couldn't find anybody. So anyway, kind of explains why I'm in kind of an unusual part of the world here. And that's the book. And it was a very collaborative effort. Many wonderful physicians and patients that contributed, and the patients' stories and the family members of stories really was what got me. I would either talk or email or talk in person, whatever, variety of ways. One person after another, I kept hearing the same stories. Stories of, I've been to this doctor and that doctor and that doctor. It took me 2 years, it took me 5 years, it took me 10 years, it took me 20 years to get a diagnosis. I went to a psychiatrist and they told me to go to my medical doctor. Oh my gosh, this is not psychiatry, this is mental health. They went to their medical doctor who said, oh my gosh, this is psychological, you better go to see a therapist or a psychiatrist. And they were getting lost in between. And they weren't being heard and they felt crazy. And that just got me. I just thought, we've got to expose this. This has got to be something that people have to understand and have to find a way to get people the diagnosis quicker. I actually believe there's more people out there than what the statistics show. I know it's considered a rare illness, but I know too many people with acromegaly. To me, it's rare as once in a lifetime I meet somebody, and I've met a lot of people. And so it's not so rare that we should ignore it, that's for sure. So why do people even have emotions? What's the purpose of having emotions? I think we need to be aware of that, because sometimes you wonder, can't I just cut it off? These are so difficult. Why can't I just put it away sometimes? And sometimes it is hard. But first of all, Mother Nature put them there as a way to communicate. We need to communicate our needs to other people. And I have found, and I'm going to presume many of you have found, a challenge in the last few months. When you go into a store, I don't have mine with me, and we're all now doing this, right? We're all walking into stores or walking around with masks on. And I realize that I'm smiling, I'm trying to communicate that I'm a nice person, I'm not here to rob a bank or whatever. And I realize how much of our facial below our nose is about communicating, and how much I miss seeing that with another human being. That is part of the way we connect, and we let somebody know I'm a safe person, I'm interested, I'm shocked, whatever it may be. That's our facial features are very much a part of how we let others know what our needs are. We also need to communicate our emotions. If you're with somebody closely and you read their face, are they angry, sad, despairing, whatever that may be? Our feelings are there to kind of hopefully give a hint to somebody else, so that again, so our needs can be met. And to ensure that not just the words, it's not just the sound of the words, although the sound makes a difference, how we inflect our voices, that makes something to do with communication. But there's a lot to it. Our body language, what we do with our hands, with our bodies, our eyes, it's all part of the communication of what our inner needs are. And it's helping to bridge a gap between one human being and another. We are what I call herd animals. Humans need other people. We need other people to protect us, to have our backs, for us to feel safe. And safety is really important. It's a real basic human need. And so we need to have those social signals. And our senses are the way that we communicate that. Very important for survival of the species. So part of what the endocrine system, the hormones, have to do is, and the pituitary gland is right at the center of what we call the stress circuit. And a lot of times I believe that in the news or articles, whatever, people will talk about stress like it's a bad thing. Oh, I'm so stressed. My work has got me stressed. Coronavirus is stressing me out, whatever it may be. And no doubt stress has a bad side to it. But in reality, whether it's the subjective experience of something new, whatever may be happening, or something threatening, it helps our behavior and our neurochemistry to react as we need to. We need to be able to react to threat, but we also need a little bit of stress in our lives to help us just get going. Around 8 a.m. every morning, we get a little boost of cortisol, one of the hormones that gets released from the adrenal glands, and it just gets us on live. That in addition to our morning coffee or whatever we tend to do. And throughout the day, cortisol will rise and it would fall naturally. After lunch, we've had a nice lunch, whatever, we get a little sleepy. There's a little lowering of those hormones. And hopefully by somewhere around 10 o'clock at night, cortisol goes down, which allows us to begin to get ready for sleep. Now, this is in an ideal world, of course, in an ideal body, I should say. And the hormones, and particularly this HPA axis, is there to help us get to a place of what we call homeostasis, which is balance. So from the Greek, kind of helping to know about balance. And each one of us has kind of a level of balance. For me, I use a 1 to 10 scale. And I kind of think of it like 1 being, I'm laying on a beach in Hawaii with one of those pretty flowered drinks and the breezes are going and I have not a care in the world. A 10, I don't even want to think about, but maybe a 7 is things are going terribly wrong or there's been something really bad happen. Hopefully my day is going to fluctuate maybe in the 4, 5, 3 kind of range. That's kind of where my ideal place is going to be. Some other people, I'll say some people that are hormonally challenged, where the hormones are either not balanced or medically or internally yet, they can be all over the map. You can get an awful lot of disruption in the normal process with hormones, and that can cause it to feel like there's an emergency going on all the time. And that can be really rough. That can be a real difficult thing to deal with. But that's the body kind of going way off kilter. But it's not you going crazy. It feels crazy, but it's like the hormones that are kind of causing that. But I think it's important to know the difference between what my body is doing and what is really happening, but also to know where your kind of good place is. Where's your kind of good numbers? And that's the place we want to try to get back to that place of homeostasis. And there are some techniques to be able to do that. So when we talk about that stress circuit, that interplay between the hormones and the nervous system, we need to be able to respond to a threat. Otherwise, as a species, we would have died a long time ago. So on the short-term basis, it gives us a boost of that cortisol. It helps us get going, helps us to respond. If there's a threat, if I'm sitting here and a burglar comes through the room waving a baseball bat, I darn well better respond to that. I need to be able to quickly, very quickly, make a decision. Am I going to fight or am I going to try to jump away and run away? I could freeze, but that's not the best response. So we've really only got those 3 responses. And my brain, I'm not going to be thinking about it, because if I think about it and I go, well, let's see, what would I do? What would be the thing to do? Maybe I'll make a list, or maybe I'll make an Excel spreadsheet and I'll weigh the pluses and minuses. That's not going to work using modern day kind of analogies. We had to have something built into our system. So Mother Nature gave us the pituitary, gave us the adrenal glands to be able to, boom, respond just like that. On the long term, however, see, our system was built to respond to short-term stress. That's great. We need that. On the long term, if we have a real crisis or trauma of one sort or another, emotional trauma, physical trauma, on a long-term basis. If we're a child and we live in a war zone, if there's been abuse over a long period of time, if there's a threat of one sort or another, what ends up happening is that the system starts breaking down and it starts to attack the cardiovascular system. It can cause diabetes, obesity, depression, eating disorders. The bones can start deteriorating because these hormones were not intended to be in the body on an ongoing basis, on a chronic basis. So sometimes an illness will result from trauma that has happened for even years before. And also, it can also suppress the immune system, which is one of the reasons why sometimes, along with some of these pituitary disorders, people will also have immune dysfunction. They'll have a lot of other illnesses as well. Not good. So this was an important, I don't know, quote that just hits me. It says, a medical illness can be like a terrorist who has appeared on the doorstep, barged inside the home, and demanded everything the family has. And the true impact a major medical illness has is, it can be devastating, obviously. Hopefully we can find a place of healing, which is where I come in, but not to underestimate the impact. So in terms of acromegaly specifically, and this is, I'm sure most of you know, it usually results from a growth hormone, the GH secreting tumor, in or near or on the pituitary gland. In adults, typically you'll get soft tissue swelling, with enlargement of the hands, the feet, on the forehead. You got musculoskeletal issues, the nervous system and gastrointestinal systems, and other things, obviously. And typically, people get diagnosed in their 40s and 50s. But a lot of people will look back, and again, when they look back, they realize that they had a lot of symptoms that were before that predate the actual diagnosis, if they're lucky enough to get a diagnosis. And then some of those early symptoms are things like irritability and agitation, more than your average bear. And we're talking extreme anxiety, extreme fearfulness. Again, the anger and rage that I talked about, with the slightest provocation, things that shouldn't typically cause that kind of reaction. Feeling like you're losing your mind. A lot of people will say, or be told, oh, it's all in your head. Well, yeah, but doesn't mean I'm crazy. It is all in your head, but it's also in the body and in the soul. Increased emotional lability, which means that up and down moods. Amenorrhea, which is the cessation of menstrual periods in women. Again, the depression, feeling confused about everything, self-doubt, just losing your sense of really feeling firm on the ground. Social isolation. Again, I can't emphasize enough why the community, this community, many communities, connections are so important, but be kind of withdrawing from the world. And there's a lot of reasons for that, I think. And then sleep apnea is more of a physical kind of thing, but certainly can create a lot of problems. I put this in because this is classically what a lot of medical journals in medical schools, if you look up in the internet, this is what you get acromegaly looks like. And we've all seen these kind of pictures. And I'm not going to keep it very long, but yes, some of those symptoms, and some people have all of that. But I've met a lot of acromegalics who don't look like that. And unfortunately, they get lost because those are the pictures that doctors are looking for. They've been taught, 15 minutes in medical school, that this is what you look like. And if you don't, then you must not have the illness. So those are some of the reasons why the diagnoses get delayed for so long. This, I won't read every part of this, but I think this slide talks about what I look at as the 3 phases of those features of acromegaly. You've got the pre-diagnosis. You've got some of the things I just mentioned about. Some of those things you can look back and go, oh yeah, that was connected. Then you've got the diagnosis, and maybe you're going to have surgery, but it's coming up, and there could be some feelings of relief. At least I've got a name for this. At least somebody believes me. If I have a name for something, maybe it can be treated. There can be a lot of impatience because, oh my gosh, I've waited so many years to get a diagnosis. Can't we get moving on this? And unfortunately, a lot of medical tests take a long time. This is not an easy thing to diagnose, even in the hands of really specialist doctors, which really is necessary, is to go to the top ones. But it's not an easy thing. A lot of patients will talk about feeling a burden to their family, that this whole thing has been a burden, can feel guilty because of this. Sometimes because of that, they'll withdraw. They stop connecting with family, with friends. Body image. Unfortunately, some people get, because family members will not even recognize you or will react negatively. Oh my gosh, you look different. I don't even recognize you since our last family reunion. What's changed? So sometimes even people on the street will shun people with some of the more pronounced physical features. Fearing death, of course. Fearing the medical procedures and the things that you've got to go through. Feeling detached. And anger righteously towards the medical communities. You know, why haven't they taken care of this sooner? A loss of control over your future, your life. Certainly can feel helpless. Concern over your family, you're worried. And we've mentioned some of those other things. And then even after surgery, you get the diagnosis, maybe you get some medication. They've said, great, we got a great surgeon. We're going to go in, we're going to do some surgery. We got the tumor out. Awesome. Aren't I all better now? Shouldn't my world be perfect now? Maybe not. Sometimes people have post-traumatic stress disorder just because of going through all this other stuff that we've talked about. That's traumatic for many. I'm not saying everybody, but trauma of just going through the months to years of being denied, being told you're crazy, being told you're too fat because you're eating too many potato chips, being told that you're making this all up. You know, why are you getting angry? I mean, innumerable number of reasons, and feeling crazy. It can cause actual trauma. Even depression. Now that we've been through all of this, look at all the time that I've lost of my life. What would I have been? Who could I have been if my body hadn't betrayed me? It could feel like a betrayal. And sometimes you just feel battle fatigued, just really tired of having gone through everything. And now I'm still having emotions. I'm still feeling things. And gosh, you mean I still have to keep going to an endocrinologist, maybe for the rest of my life? I still have to go and get MRIs every once in a while. I have to, you know, have my medications adjusted. That could be tiring. And again, sometimes sometimes people even avoid their doctors because of this battle of fatigue. Not the best choice, I don't think, but certainly understandable, particularly if you're not getting good medical care. And some people still have some mental confusion. There can be some cognitive impairments, either because of the surgery, because of the damage of the tumor. You're talking about the area of the base of the brain here, pretty important. And it, you know, some of those things are real to deal with. So when we talk about those mental and emotional aspects, we can see the reasons for depression and anger and mood swings and apathy and your brain not working well, feeling like you can't go to work and things are not, you're not doing as good a job because you can't concentrate, you can't get the words right, forgetting things. All of those things together can have an effect on you emotionally. And then if you're feeling that way, your family's gonna, obviously, and the people around you. The sexual aspects, sometimes a little tender and difficult to talk about for people. In my practice, again, I work with either individuals or couples where they don't know the words, or it's too embarrassing, or they were raised where we just don't talk about sex. But particularly with acromegaly, you can get hypogonadism. There can be prolactinomas in there, another form of effect on the pituitary. The sex, it can go away completely or certainly diminish a great deal. And there can be certainly problems with infertility with couples that are trying to get pregnant. And we know that the sex is a part of a communication that we have with another human being. It is a method of communicating and finding intimacy. And we can do a whole head trip on ourselves about if I'm not doing it right, or what's wrong with me, or my partner doesn't love me enough, or whatever. There's lots of those things. And if a couple can't talk about it, that makes it even harder to address and deal with. So I really do think that we really need to find those ways to be able to bring it to the forefront, be able to talk gently and honestly about these aspects of normal life. Sometimes it requires a change in perspective, quite honestly. And it's hard, but anybody who has a diagnosis of acromegaly, whether you've had surgery or medication or both, your life has had to adjust. You know, what you thought your life was going to be, it isn't going to be. And there's a major life adjustment. Kind of know, you know, right now, everybody knows what an adjustment is like, a major adjustment with coronavirus. None of us, I would say at Christmas time, did we ever think that we were going to even be able to do this, quite honestly, for this long. I mean, I'm actually kind of proud of humanity that we've been able to do as well as we have. And then we put on top of that a lot of social change that we're dealing with. And I think it could have been a lot worse. And I think there's some good that's coming about, but it isn't the same. And we are having to adjust. And anybody with a major illness, and certainly a rare illness, their life has had to do a major 160-degree turn, you know. And with that comes adaptation. If you're going to survive and hopefully thrive, we have to find some tools and we have to find a way to adapt. And that's not bad. I think some of these challenges that we have can actually make us better people. Just because we didn't plan on it and we never would will us to have any of this, sometimes it brings out the best in a lot of people, causes us to improvise. Anybody old enough to remember the television show called MacGyver? I love that show, where this guy just, no matter what you gave him, he came up with a solution. It was just the coolest show. I wish they still had that. It's like we all have had to kind of learn how to be MacGyvers. We've had to do with what we've got and get real creative. And sometimes out of that creativeness, we can be pretty proud of ourselves. And it can be really cool. And when we're talking about intimacy, there are many ways to be intimate, you know, and when we go back to the thinking about, you know, what we thought of when we were 15 and filled with hormones or whatever, where there was only one way to be intimate, I think there's many ways to be intimate. And sometimes that intimacy can be much deeper. And by exploring some of these issues with another human being and being able to address these things, even like here in this community, that's a form of intimacy. And I think that can be really depth producing. I think it'd become pretty cool. The physical aspects of acromegaly and pituitary disorders in general, I mean, you know, those effects of either directly or indirectly, weight gain, the imbalances in the hormones, cardiovascular issues, the musculoskeletal issues, being able to have physical stamina and the external appearance. Yeah, all those things are there. And if you're going to recover, and recovery doesn't mean going back to who you were, because that's gone. That's a grieving process to recognize that you will never be the person you were. And that takes some time and some patience, and that's always difficult, and a lot of endurance and a lot of hard work, and having a good close communication with your doctor. I think that having a really good team of doctors is important. I put this picture up because Christina Bourne, if any of you have known of her, she was Miss Nevada, and I think it was in the 90s, my recollection, and she's in there somewhere. But she did this Iron Girl thing, and she had a pituitary disorder and had, you know, was treated, and she's been a spokesperson, and lovely, lovely, lovely young woman. And obviously she found some ways to find her life and to maybe take a different turn. And she wasn't doing Iron Girl things before, but she did find this way, and that helped her find her own recovery. I just want to talk about employment. It's a practical side of life. Sometimes for people whose external appearance is different, very relevant in today's world, very relevant. There can be job discrimination. I've talked to patients who've had a difficulty with social relationships with their bosses or coworkers, who didn't understand any of the illness, didn't understand the whole thing. Particularly if there's anger outbursts at work and frustrations at work, that can be a factor. It's important. We all are personally responsible, even if our body is going haywire. So it means that we have an added burden to have to learn about how do we deal with hormones that are going all over the place. But it can certainly affect the employment setting. The actual physical ability to do work. I have talked to so many people who just like, I don't know if I can get through a day, or have been laid off or had to go on part-time because their bodies just were exhausted. It's an issue. And cognitive challenges, I've talked again, can you even just do the same work anymore? And for some people they can't. And then if there is unemployment, in a world right now, we're dealing with a lot of this issues. There's the breakdown financially, insurance-wise, family-wise, obviously big challenges. I'm not gonna deny all that stuff. Some of the diagnostic difficulties, and I talk about, is this the chicken, egg, or both? There was a Dr. Luis Sobrinho, who a phenomenal endocrinologist and researcher in Portugal, who contributed a chapter to my book. And he talked about it in terms of the chicken or the egg, and I think that was the title of his chapter. And he did some research about the impact of these pituitary disorders and how hard it is to get a diagnosis. Because through my list here, and I won't go through them, there are the medical symptoms. There are medical symptoms. Let's look at you know, any one of those. Well, the mental health symptoms are oftentimes very similar, or there's another side of the mental health that kind of goes with those. And so the question for any doctor or mental health person is this a medical thing? Is it a mental health thing? And I personally feel it's a both thing. I think we need to stop putting them in separate categories, and we need to start recognizing that the body is kind of like all connected. It's a brilliant thought, but you know, as far as I know, the brain and the head is kind of connected to the body, you know, and it's connected to the limbs, and you know, it is all together. And that's kind of my little shtick, is recognizing that there is an interconnectivity, and we need to not be putting it in such separate categories. The community aspects, in terms of what are the local, state, regional, national, international resources that are available. Obviously, anybody here knows at least one resource, the acromegaly community. But probably we have to find what resources are available and what works for you at whatever particular point in your life. I don't think there's any one thing that's good for everybody. And I don't think any one person needs to go and access every single resource that's out there, because that could be too much too, because that's like an that's going the other direction where you're kind of over trying to access, and in that process can become a little obsessive. That's not what we're looking for. You want to stop and just kind of notice, what do I need today? What would be good information for me today? And when do I need to shut this thing off, shut the TV off, whatever it may be? And sometimes I need to just be peaceful with myself. And that's a resource as well. I think it's important to look at what the patient and the family, what is the willingness to seek out and accept help? Because not everybody, some people are more private. I might want to get more help, but maybe my husband is more private and doesn't want to talk about it. So we have to kind of work those things out within the family. And in terms of education, there are books out there, there's articles, there's spokespeople that are out there, much more than ever was. When I first began this, maybe 20-ish years ago, it was hard for me to find resources, and I'm finding much more now. And thank goodness there's more and more. And thanks to a lot of patients and family members who are beginning to support one another more and more and more, which I think is awesome. And in terms of finding some support community-wise, I think you can find face-to-face, one-on-one. There's nothing wrong with me talking to one other human being. It could be a therapist, it could be my doctor, it could be a patient advocate, it could be somebody on a patient group where I maybe just need to talk one-on-one, and that's the level that really works for me, and that's where I need it. There's these Zoom groups, there's support groups, real live, back when we actually used to meet live. Hopefully everybody remembers way back in February, which can be very powerful. There are a few around the country that I know of that have been going on for a while. And if you are lucky enough to be geographically near a place where you can actually go and sit down in a group and you can see somebody else who has similar story to mine or can really get my pain. I don't think there's anything like looking into the eyes of somebody who just gets it. They've been there, they've been through this. I personally have had migraine headaches my whole life since I was about 10, maybe is when I first remember. And when I talk to somebody who gets chronic migraines, I don't need to use a lot of words. You just say a couple words and they just look at you and they know. And that's comforting. And I think that's powerful. And we all, I think, need to seek out those people who can really get it. And we would all love our family to totally get us. And I'm a family therapist and I try to get people to help, but it's not the same as somebody who's going through it like you are, who's been to the doctors, who has similar symptoms. It's never exactly the same, but pretty close. So I think I really encourage people to find those connections. In terms of the family aspects, I think, this is me personally, this is my little soapbox. There are pituitary centers of excellence around the country. I highly encourage people to go to those places that have the doctors, the specialists who work with pituitary disorders. Your particular disorder, that's important. But I have yet to talk to ones that really have integrated the mental health aspect fully and have brought in the family to the degree that I think probably could, to really help educate the family members, have them even be able to talk amongst themselves about what their experience is. So I think there's really, and it's really unique to each family, because sometimes it really depends on how fast or slow did the illness even come about. Because it can be a very long, slow process, or it could have kind of come on a lot faster. That has an effect on how people have dealt with all this. The amount of time it took to get a diagnosis, that's, I mean, that fatigue factor happens for families too. You want your family to understand you, but some of them get tired, and they get tired of not understanding and not knowing, and hearing the doctors that don't know, and that they don't understand either. So that can be difficult. And it does make a difference if the family is involved in the treatment somehow, go to doctors, at least some of the patient appointments or not, or some of the support groups. I think if there's a support group that can involve family members, that can be wonderful. And then for family members, the stress specific to family members, each illness has its own little course, and that just depends on how caregivers or family members, how do they take all that? Some are going to be easygoing, and they're used to, or maybe they lived with a parent or a brother or sister growing up that had some kind of an illness, and they just slide in and they can adapt. Not everybody does. Not every family member has good coping mechanisms. Not everybody has learned to modulate their own stress system about how this burden may be on them financially, economically, however it may go. And on the children, if there's children involved, what does this mean if a parent can't quite do all the parental caregiving or be quite the parent they'd like to be? That can be a stressor on children. So I think that kind of recognizing that aspect for the family. So for me, ideally, we're really looking to hopefully develop, and that means probably each patient has to find, hopefully, an integrative and very collaborative treatment model for them. And what that means is finding doctors, mental health, if they feel the necessity, dentists are part of this as well, and any other, could be physical therapy, could be lots of other professionals who are willing, and it doesn't mean they're going to talk all the time, but it means they're willing to consult on a professional basis and at least be aware of what each professional's job is and how they can work with one another. And I believe that that is in the patient's best interest. And for patients themselves and family members to be willing to listen to your own body, to just be what I'll call body aware, but not body obsessed. Whenever any of us have an illness, it's easy to go, oh dear, this is, now I've got it, the tumor's coming back. I can feel this, it's grown back, or, oh dear, now I'm getting polyps. Oh my gosh, this is, and it's understandable. But we're talking about in a more peaceful kind of way, just being willing to take in the information that the body gives us, because the body will give us messages. Sometimes we don't listen to those messages, so then the body has to speak a little louder. But being able to listen without being fearful and track, that means oftentimes it means being willing to really notice, be precise and accurate in the information, probably writing it down so that you can communicate that with your providers. Particularly doctors, your endocrinologists, they're going to need numbers. How many days this month did you have this symptom? Like on a 1 to 10 scale, how intense was it? Are we talking an average of about 2 to 3 or 7 to 8? That will help communicate with your provider, kind of help them kind of know maybe medication adjustment or what kind of treatment they might need. So finding a way to, as clearly and precisely as possible, to communicate with doctors so that you work as a team. I know we kind of wish that doctors just kind of could have this sixth sense to know what we need and magically write a prescription and it would all be better. That's called magical thinking. And we all have it from time to time. But the reality is all of us, whether we have a pituitary tumor or migraines or anything else, we have to kind of be responsible to be able to notice, to be participative, and to help those doctors be able to help us. And you've got to be able to advocate for yourself. Groups like Pituitary World News or Acromegaly Community and others are beginning to be advocates, you know, in laws and with the medical community, but it has to kind of start with us first and being able to know that we can't stay silent. We have to communicate and being willing to accept the help when it's necessary, do what we can do for yourself as much as possible. And I think be persistent. And I hate that word patience, but it's really necessary. It's hard to be patient when you're not feeling good. When you get downtrodden and things don't seem to be working well. But that's where I think we go back to connections, community, family, to be able to help pick us up when we need to get some of that help. There's something called medical family therapy, probably not terribly well known. A lot of people have heard of family therapists, which is what I am. There's a subspecialty of medical family therapists who've actually been trained alongside of physicians, and it's a new upcoming kind of thing. And they look at medical illness of all kinds, but really how does it impact the family and what stage of their life? What's the role of each member of the family? Who has leadership skills in the family? All families have some kind of leadership. Maybe we didn't realize that it was a leadership skill, but maybe it's, you know, this person can take over a little bit more doing one thing and they have a skill, a talent. Maybe it's cooking breakfast, you know, or maybe it's making pancakes is my particular thing. You know, maybe a 10-year-old is really good at doing pancakes. Okay, cool. Maybe they get to do that a little more, and that's a sign of leadership. And that could take the burden off of parents or a patient or somebody just a little bit. So we have to kind of look at some of those wonderful things that exist in families. And then what are beliefs about illness in general? Cultural beliefs, just family history with illness in general can have an effect on how we deal with it in today's world. Like, how do we deal with this illness? Can have something to do with how my parents dealt with it or my grandparents. Believe it or not, a lot of that is very technical. But people who do medical family therapy this is what they do. So I just want to briefly talk about finding the right mental health treatment. For those, I really believe that mental health is about health. It's not about anything shameful. I really think it's time to get rid of this whole idea of you have to be crazy to see a therapist. I know the movies have promulgated this. I know there's long history of people talking about this, but in all honesty, I don't see crazy people. I never have. I see people that are struggling, that have pain, or that just want to improve their lives. And I think there are places that people can go to. But particularly with something very specific like acromegaly, I'm going to give you some ideas of how to find that person, and it isn't easy. The bad news is you're not going to be able to find a mental health professional who specializes in pituitary disorders, let alone acromegaly. There are just not very many people out there. I'm trying to change that, but I'm not sure in my lifetime I'm going to be able to keep trying. So the good news is that it is possible to find the right therapist, and they don't have to know about your particular illness, but you do want to find that they're willing to learn, first of all, and that you can feel safe, comfortable, and it can feel like a real healing relationship. It can take a little while, you know, a few sessions to know that that's the right person for you. And to recognize that, especially if, for somebody who has acromegaly, or you have a family member with acromegaly, you are the expert. You know, you are definitely the expert in acromegaly. You know way more than any expert, really, because you know about you and your particular situation. So you want a mental health provider who's going to be curious, who's going to learn about you and about your system, and is willing to do the effort to maybe read something, go online, consult with somebody. I am willing to consult for free. I'll talk to somebody on the phone. I'll try to get them, point them in the right direction. But if you're looking for someone and you're trying to weed out, I highlighted some of the words that are kind of hot button words that I think could help a little bit. So at least if you can find somebody that works with chronic or severe illness, when you begin to start talking to them about your particular illness, I think they'll get it. I think that they will then be open-minded enough. Somebody who's used to who advertises trauma work, because trauma can mean emotional trauma, events in your life. It can mean physical trauma, doctors, hospitalizations, that sort of thing. Obviously, medical family therapy that I talked about. If you can find somebody that does that, you're way ahead of the game. And willing to consult, of course, and being willing to be part of a treatment team. And last but not least is the financial arrangements. You really, I understand it's a real world, and if insurance covers this person, or, you know, there's a whole nother deal to dealing with insurance, and that can be a little tricky, but you want to make sure you don't have a problem on top of a problem. You don't want to find out that down the road, you now owe a whole lot of money to the therapist who the insurance isn't going to pay for. So you kind of want to make sure that gets taken care of. So I actually took this picture a year ago. A year ago, my family and I, my husband and I, celebrated our 50th anniversary. Big deal. And so I saved up for several years. I wanted to take the whole family to Italy. And we went to Italy, and this is on the steps of Assisi in Italy. A phenomenal trip, once in a lifetime. It just meant a whole lot. And a year now afterwards, it means even more to me, because I think back on where Italy was a month ago or so, and in dealing with the pandemic and what they've had to deal with, obviously what we have as well. But in general, I think of pathways. You know, I love all kinds of pathways, because I think it's a great metaphor for how to discover, in general, a lot of things, how to pave. Sometimes we have to make our own pathway. Sometimes we have to broaden that pathway. We have to broaden our definitions of things. We have to look at a lot of different things. We have to be willing to learn about our own pathway, and hopefully connect with other people who are also on a pathway. Up that way, we might connect to somebody else who might connect to somebody else who might have a piece of a puzzle that might help all of us. And some of the pathways, this one is ancient. This city was built in the 1100s, maybe even a little before. These steps are old, and yet it's still there. And people are still searching and traveling. And I just think for all of you, it is a path, and it takes a lot of bravery. And whatever you're doing, it's a brave path. And if there's anything that I've said or can do that can be helpful along that path, I hope it's meaningful for you. I will be willing to take some questions if you like. I have some resources here, and some places to find articles, and probably a lot more. So I don't know, Jill, if there's any questions out there, or.
Let me look through our chat, and
Okay.
if anyone wants to raise your hand, I think on the little reaction, button, we can unmute you. Hold on. I'm gonna unmute Bella. Bella has a question. Just one second.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Bella.
So I was just wondering, is there a way we can share these slides? Fantastic talk, really great slides. And I know a couple of people have asked if we can kind of get a copy, especially of some of the pages.
I'll send it over to Jill, and I'll let Jill handle that one, I guess.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, and Jennifer, I'm going to unmute you next. Okay, Jennifer.
Hi there. Thanks for a lovely talk. My question was, is the apathy that you were talking about, is that kind of like a learned helplessness?
No, not well. I don't believe so, Jennifer. From what I understand is that there's a real biological component to it. Now, I'm not saying that it's not possible to develop learned helplessness. That's separate and it's a little bit different. But one of the things we've noticed is just because of the biochemical components and where these hormones affect what parts of the brain, that we know that certain parts of the brain have certain reactions, and there is something very different about the apathy response. Not everybody's going to get it, of course. Every body is different. And so and for anybody who doesn't know what learned helplessness is, it can be over a period of time, over and over again, being downtrodden, I would say, being, feeling like this isn't working, this isn't working, this isn't working, or being told this isn't going to work, or being told you're crazy, or whatever it may be, that it's kind of like you learn to give up. And they're separate things. They could both be happening. But did that answer your question, Jennifer?
Yeah, super. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, the next person looks like it is Noor. Noor, I'm unmuting you now.
Okay.
Noor?
Yes, can you hear me now?
You can ask your question.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. My question, I have two questions actually. One of them is, do you have a guide that is comprehensive that we could send to therapists to give them kind of a primer on our condition? Because from my experience, it's actually a really long process of the therapist beginning to understand what you even have. Like, I don't know how many sessions you have to go through before they even get to the point of understanding it. And so if there's some sort of like a comprehensive guide, not too short, but not too long, that gives them that primer, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. I'll answer that one. In the back of my book and the resources section of my book, the closest thing that I did is I developed a couple of, I think it's 2-3 pages long, kind of a checklist where therapists, and it's meant for mental health professionals, can kind of go through and look for symptoms that they would probably see and kind of check. And if you see numerous number of these checks, then it's not like 5 check marks equals this diagnosis, but it does kind of say that there could be a pituitary disorder of some sort, and certainly for them to then refer to a physician or encourage the person or to begin learning more. So it's not exactly what you're talking about. Maybe reading my book that might help as well. I would like to say there's a quick and easy way, but obviously this is not a simplistic kind of a diagnosis. But I do trainings from time to time for mental health people, and in a matter of a few hours, at least they have the basics. There've been a few YouTube videos out there, I think, with me doing a few talks. Again, if a therapist is willing to go and do the effort to learn, it helps, at least.
Okay. My second question is actually about sleep. I know a lot of us have trouble falling asleep, trouble with
Yeah.
our schedules. Like, it's not just falling asleep, it's waking up, it's when you get sleepy, it's energy levels throughout the day. So, you know, what can you tell us about how to manage our energy levels and
Yeah. Well, and this is one, yeah, I know. Well, if I had a one sentence answer to that, I would be very rich and famous. But this is really where the collaboration between your endocrinologist and like a therapist, mental health person really comes into play, I believe, because there are sleep techniques, you know, and there's sleep study places where you can go. But there's a real biological aspect, you know, hormonally to this. So I would say that there are things you can do, and it's a matter of doing a lot of them frequently and finding as best as you can. And it probably won't work every night, but I would say tracking the sleep is important. Communicating that really clearly with your endocrinologist so they really get, you really need to know me, doc, you know. And when you're with your doctors also, because they don't want to talk, they don't have a lot of time, you know, being able to concisely and let them know just how serious it is. There's also sleep apps that can help you record, you know, how much. There's also apps that sometimes can help people get to sleep, stay asleep a little bit. I totally understand. Sleep is a really basic thing. It's very extremely important. But also worrying about getting to sleep can cause you to not get to sleep. So it's a both and. It's like there's a lot of things, and it's a bigger, it's like a whole talk unto itself. But I would say it's a big issue, and there are things you can try and do, and I don't think any one thing will work. But keep trying.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I believe June, you are next.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Hi,
Can you
June.
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. My concern is in South Africa. It's really not well known, and like I've been listening to how support groups and community is doing. So I'm glad that somebody did ask about whether you have some material we could share. Because in my case, I've actually just realized from the first webinar and this one now that I've not been receiving proper treatment. And it's really a concern for me because, like you said, I thought post-surgery, voila, life will go on, but I'm really stuck. And part of what I'm experiencing is self-isolation. I mean, I've isolated myself so much. I'm from Kimberley in the Northern Cape. I ran to come and live in Cape Town, far away from everybody. I even left my children because it's very difficult. So I heard you saying you do have something, and I'll also check your book because it's difficult to create awareness when you don't have people to create awareness with. But I even have to start with the medical people to say, this is exactly what is happening, because I'm still going, like having to explain myself what is happening. And I don't know if you realize I did not get much affected physically. So it's also another problem to say, they'll say, oh, we thought acromegaly, you become like this, you didn't change that much. So I'm suffering along that way, put it that way. But I also sent you a private message. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comment. And the book, Pituitary, the second one that's listed on the screen right now, Pituitary Disorders Diagnosis and Management, that isn't one particularly for patients to buy. First of all, it's pretty expensive, but it's one you want to take to your doctors and say, look, this is for you. Are you aware of this? It has got, I should know this, but probably over 100 of the top experts in the world. And they go through all, not just acromegaly. It's not just about acromegaly. It's about all kinds of pituitary disorders. And they talk about a lot of them. But one of the message they keep pounding home is this is more common than you probably have been trained in medical school. You need to know about this. Here's the signs and symptoms. And they go into the detailed medical assays and stuff that I don't think we need to, as patients or patient advocates need to know, but it would make sense for the doctors. The other thing is some of the websites and some of the links, you can get some of the articles for free, and you might be able to print them and hand them to the doctors, say, have you read this, or could you please read this? If you don't have access to a top specialist, although there are some specialists in today's world who are doing telehealth or telemedicine, like through video stuff, you can check with some of the major medical centers and find out whether they could be helpful. So I wish you a lot of luck, really do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And Jill, am I going way over? I didn't
You're
know.
a little over, but
I am. I'm sorry about
you're
that.
okay with that. I mean, I'm sure that our members have gotten wonderful information from you. I have one. A lot of patients deal with what we recall as what we call acro rage. Do you have any pointers on how to deal with that? I can tell you how I deal with it myself. If I start to get angry, I try to count to 10 before I lose my top.
Yeah.
But do you have any suggestions for helping our patients? And I truly do. I know that it is a physical thing.
Yeah.
And, with acromegaly patients, and it's not our fault. But do you have any suggestions on how patients can help control that?
It's an excellent question, and I appreciate you sharing what you do, because I think that's important. I think the first thing is the first step is being able to acknowledge that this is biological, it's physical, and communicating that with people who are around you. Kind of informing them, educating them that you have an illness. It has something to do with your hormones. I think one of the ways you can, a lot of regular folk who don't know about this, you can say, have you ever been a teenager or known one? Everybody always says, yeah. You know how teenagers' emotions kind of go like this and how they'll slam their door and go to their room. Okay. Have you ever been pregnant or known a pregnant woman? Yeah. And everybody goes, oh yeah, right? Have you ever known a menstruating woman or been one? Yes. Okay. So with that in mind, those are biological things. That's a biological thing that goes on. But all of those people also need to learn that it could be my time of the month, but I still have to kind of pay attention to what are the triggers for me. So it's beginning to maybe start paying closer attention to, are there any specific things that are triggering? And maybe it is a time of day. It could be different medications, like when do you take your medication? That may be something you need to communicate with your doctor. Your doctor might be able to help you with some of that. Being able to know yourself, certainly, I think, and it takes a lot of practice. I would say there's things called mindfulness. You'll find things on YouTube, and there's even apps on mindfulness training. I could talk forever on that, but it's beginning to really pay attention to your body, pay attention to how you feel, and you learn ways to just slow the process down a little bit. And it doesn't mean that you don't have a right to be angry, but being able to slow it down, and then you allow what we call this part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, to be able to help modulate and get back to that place of balance a little bit, so that if you're going to respond, you do it not in a knee-jerk way, but you then say things that have a little bit more composure to them, or getting yourself removed, walking away. Really important to realize I don't have to solve this right at this moment. I can walk away. Very few things have to be dealt with that are life and death at this moment. Okay? A lot of times, if I walk away, do something physical. It's really important, because rage or anger is a very biological thing. That cortisol and adrenaline rage into your body, and it doesn't go away instantly. So we have to work with the body and be able to kind of let it loose. And sometimes even just, I'm going to just stand up, even just standing up and sitting down several times, stretching, doing some of this, taking a walk, believe it or not, will really help a lot. It's working with your body, giving that rage a place to go to that's more productive rather than counterproductive. So I don't know what that, some
No,
ideas.
thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands.
Okay, we're probably getting late
Oh,
here. I suppose.
one more,
Okay.
if you
All
don't mind.
No, fine.
I have a question, and it's kind of hard for me to frame the question, so bear with me. But
Okay.
I recently moved into assisted living, and my security at the assisted living, as far as being able to continue to be here, is already being threatened, because, like the director of nursing, I try to explain, I have acromegaly and a lot of other rare diagnoses on top.
Yeah.
And I try to explain how, we do need the best available endocrine care, because it's hard to find doctors that are knowledgeable enough to handle the case, and that we can't also just see a basic orthopedic without that orthopedic collaborating with an endocrinologist who can explain the effects of acromegaly. And I'm constantly running into a brick wall where, oh, it's your fault. You are never satisfied with the care you get. You're the one that's making it more complicated than it needs to be, when the reality is, and they throw around self-diagnose like it's a bad thing, when us patients are taught, you need to be vigilant, you need to self-advocate, you need to understand the medical terminology so that you can do that. And yet it's just like, I'm not being believed, and it's like I feel like I'm not going to get the appropriate care, which is part of the reason I came here in the first place. And I don't really know what to do about it, because it's really overwhelming, because it doesn't really seem to matter what I say. It's always comes back to, the problem is you and your relationship with people, rather than, oh, okay, well, you have valid points. You do have, a complicated diagnosis. It's not you being complicated. It's just, it's becoming really overwhelming, and I don't know what to do to make a breakthrough.
It sounds extremely frustrating, Ray. It sounds like you've certainly been trying. And I don't know that there's a magic answer. I would hope that if you can just find some, it could be an orderly, it could be a nurse, it could be somebody that you can begin to develop, who can listen. And maybe if they'd be willing to go to a website, maybe they'd be willing to, could they just be willing to listen, or, to read something? from in any of my resources or the ones that Jill has or whatever, sometimes if they hear it from somebody else, you know, sometimes it opens their ears. I will tell you that I did not believe any of this at the beginning. I mean, I feel embarrassment still. I didn't learn about this. I thought that the person that talked to me about this was making this up, that this couldn't possibly be this big of a deal if I hadn't heard of it. So I guess I was a person on that other end at one point, you know, and, you know, thinking you know it all, or if you go to school and you spend a lot of years in a particular field, you think you have learned pretty much everything you should learn. That's not the case, obviously. We can never. But I think a lot of people are invested in their own careers and they think they know, and some are very isolated. I guess I would say, you know, try your best to develop a relationship one-on-one with somebody who can maybe at least be willing to be open-minded and to learn something. And just being here, and I'll mention the other people that have already been here and asked questions. You know, you guys are already reaching out. You're not as isolated anymore. You've got this community, and there's some other places to be able to connect to. Hold on to those things. That's something. And even if it's just a little something, even if you're just believed by the people that are here today, that's important. That's something that is important. And we have to start fanning the flames a little bit to begin changing things. And it is not your invention. There's a lot of people who've got closed mind and don't know about this. And I guess it's for each one of us to begin to try to sow those seeds of understanding and helping people to learn something new that might be uncomfortable for them. And hallelujah if they'll listen. And so I wish you a lot of luck. I'm really sorry to hear the struggle that you're going through, but also a lot of courage that you've taken so far.
Okay, I think that is it. I want to say thank you. You've given us such a great presentation, and we really appreciate the knowledge that you've given us. And I also want to remind people that Catherine Jonas, although she couldn't be here today, and we're thankful that Linda could be here, that she should be back either next Sunday or the following Sunday. So I have decided that in the world that we're living in today, 2 mental health talks wouldn't hurt anyone. And so we're gonna have two talks this month instead of just one. And once again, I wanna thank you for your time. And you know, we really do appreciate, and we hope to have you on again.
Thank you, Jill. And I'll get the slides to you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And people are sending you thank you notes. I don't know if you can see them or not across in the chat box. So
in the chat, I'm looking there. I'll see if I can find it.
Petra was up. It's 2:30 a.m. where she's at. And
oh my.
Yes.
Wow. Well, and the best to everybody.
Yes. Thank you again.
Okay.
Everyone, take care, and we will see you either in a week or two. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.